Welcome back to episode 29 of the Snatch Chat podcast. So you are with me for a Q&A, having a look at the questions over here. So what we call just finding the questions, but we have a bunch of good questions to go through. So these are the questions, right? I don't know why it took me ages to find them then, but we are here. Okay, so we've got a bunch of different questions, some on equipment. There is a few on mindset, which is good. I like talking about mindset. Then from there, then we go into competition, prep. We've got a few about programming as well. So we've got a nice mix of different questions. So hopefully you managed to take some little bits out of this, whether that is equipment and things that you need or don't necessarily need, and an understanding of what is the equipment that you actually need, and how to actually improve your mindset going into Olympic lifting or going into training or even competitions if that is something that you're doing. Now, one thing that I talk about quite often in the podcast, but also over on social media, if you follow me on social media, is mindset. And that is mainly because, in my opinion, your mindset and the way that you action a lift is just as important as your physical strength and your technique. You're going to have the best technique and that you can be the strongest person. But if you crumble under pressure because of your mindset and the way that you view a lift, that is always going to be the thing that's holding you back. So this is literally just as important, if not more important. So let's get into these questions. Hope you enjoy. So question number 1. What weightlifting shoes do you actually recommend, and does it matter for a beginner or intermediate lifter? So this is something that I get asked so often, is which is the best Olympic lifting shoe? Now, in my opinion, I don't think there is a good weightlifting shoe. No, that's wrong. There's some very, very good weightlifting shoes. But I don't think there is a perfect weightlifting shoe that is for everybody. Now, when it comes to weightlifting shoes, are they necessarily compulsory? No. I do recommend people get a weightlifting shoe. That is mainly down to having that super solid base. Something heavy in the heels, something that is super hard and that is going to force you to sit into the midfoot. What you get with a lot of trainers is, you can even have training shoes, but they are mesh, and they can be quite soft, so your feet will naturally roll. So you get quite a lot of support in the Olympic lifting shoes. Secondly, if mobility isn't your strongest point and you have mobility flaws, a weightlifting shoe can plaster over those issues. Okay, so you then can get into the Olympic lifting movements a little bit easier. So if you struggle with an overhead squat with normal shoes, put these weightlifting shoes on. It's going to help you get into that bottom position, probably a little bit comfier. That doesn't mean get the weightlifting shoes to cover over what is actually going on. You're still going to improve. You still need to improve your mobility, because the better your mobility is, the better your positions are going to be, the better the overall lift is going to be. A weightlifting shoe is there just to aid you. Now, if you are learning and you haven't really got like a firm, supportive shoe, go out on and get yourself some weightlifting shoes or something that's a little bit firmer. I am not someone that is going, go to the Nike website, go to the Reebok website and buy yourself a really expensive pair. Literally, what I tell everyone to do is go over to Vinted or something like Vinted and get yourself a second-hand pair of shoes, because every weightlifting shoe fits differently. Nikes are really narrow, Reeboks are really wide. Reeboks tend to have a higher heel compared to the Nike Romalios. Now, it's all down to personal preference. I've had Reebok for years because I was always told Nike shoes were really narrow. Now, Nike shoes are really narrow, but for me, they are a perfect shoe. I've gone over the point where they felt quite tight to start with. They are now like slippers, but the heel in them not being as high actually means that in the bottom of my movements, I feel more secure. So you've got to find what works best for you. And the best way to do it is get yourself a second-hand pair that's pretty cheap and just use them. Something that I would stay away from, just because it doesn't really make much of a difference. Unless you've got insane ability and you're just looking for something that gives you that extra bit of support. The ones that I would look to avoid are like the Adidas Adi Powers. Now, the Adi Powers, or the Adi Powerlift, is literally a powerlifting shoe. The heel is minuscule. it's not necessarily there to give you that extra range to sit into deep positions, because you don't need that in powerlifting or in squats in a powerlifting competition. So they aren't designed necessarily for the Olympic lifts. So look for something with a slightly larger heel, like the Nike Romalios, the Reebok Legacy lifters, the other Addies. I feel like they are Addy Power, but they're not the powerlifting ones. Now you'll notice them as soon as you go to them. The heel is literally minuscule. Steer clear of those. Addy Power, I think they are. But then So it's one of them. Not a necessity, but something to sort of to look at potentially later on down the line. And what I've tried to do with a lot of these questions is group them together. So when I get these questions come in from the school community or even through the clients that I coach, I put them down and then try and group them as close together as possible. So we go through these sort of phases rather than it being just a total spray gun of different questions. So question number 2, what's the best way to film your own lifts for self-analysis when you train alone? Via camera. That's me being silly. But so obviously you're going to film your lifts, so you need a tripod to, bring it so you don't necessarily need a tripod, but if you rest it in your shoe and your phone is pointing at 45-degree angles upwards because it's resting on the floor, you don't necessarily see the lift in its entirety. It's better off bringing it so it's in the centre of your movement. So the camera is pointing directly at you. It's not directly pointing up and it's not pointing down. You want a view directly at you on probably about a 45-degree angle. Now you can film it from a 90-degree angle side on, but you're not necessarily going to get a great picture. A 45-degree angle allows you to have a look at the technique within the phase of the movement and also check bar path to a certain degree. If you were looking at bar path, solely just bar path, not necessarily worried about anything else, film from the side, but really that's not necessarily going to give you as much information as a 45-degree angle. I'm assuming that you haven't got a coach because you've asked this question about self-analysis, so 45-degree angle is going to give you the bigger picture. Now, if you are self-analysing your list, but you don't necessarily know what to pick up on, take a look at the link that I've put in the caption below for the weightlifting checklist. Now, this is literally what I use with all my athletes. For the snatch, clean, split, jerk, it breaks down the lifts into the positions. So you've got the first pull, end of the first pull, the power position, so on and so on, and the dip, the jerk, etc., etc. But within each of these positions, you've got KPIs, key performance indicators that you're looking to hit. Now, this is probably the best way to highlight the areas that you need to work on in training, because what you'll find is that you're going to try and correct the biggest issue at hand that occurs first in that lift. Whether that's in the start position, the mid-thigh. You're not going to look at where the failure is, you look to the first one. It's a domino effect. Fix the first issue, 9 times out of 10, you'll fix something later on down that line. If you fix something later on, and you've got all these things that happen at the start, 9 times out of 10, you won't necessarily fix this thing that happens at the end. Fix these at the first, domino effect, and then work your way backwards, or work your way upwards. Hope that makes sense. Next question. How many cues should I be thinking about during a lift? And how do I choose which one to use? Now this goes into a bigger picture, because the cues that you should use, it's all bloody rhyming this is. The cues that you should use should focus on the purpose behind the training program. Now, what I will always say to all my athletes is that they will probably have a big thing, the overarching thing that we're looking to try and fix, okay? That is the primary focus, and we will not change that primary focus for the whole of that training cycle until that issue is fixed. This is the overarching goal. For example, let's say it is speed under the bar, okay, or speed under the bar. I hate that flipping term, but speed under the bar. They're quite slow and controlled. Now, from this main goal, there are 2 secondary things that we're looking for, okay? Those secondary things are loose arms and bar to paint the shins and thighs, okay? Now, if the speed under the bar is the main thing that we're going to focus on, but we have the 2 cues of long arms and paint the shins and thighs, painting the shins and thighs would be the main cue that they are going to action before the lift. Now, when you said here, what do I think about during the lift? Do not think about anything during the lift. When you are about to lift, you almost want to have a blank canvas. If you have one thought process, 9 times out of 10, you're overthinking about that through that lift. And we've always got to be one step ahead of the movement in the Olympic lifts. Having that one thought will hold you back slightly. So the way that I would look at this is that I'm sat down before my next set. I've got a couple of minutes before I go into my next set. This is where I'm going to think about, I'm going to work on that speed under the bar. I need to make sure my arms are nice and long and I'm painting that shin. I'm going to visualize it, and I'm also going to pretend to do that lift so I can start to understand how I want it to feel and also visualize how I want it to look. Then from there, I'm going to stand up and I head over to the bar. That is when I think about my one main cue, which is painting the shins and thighs. As soon as I set up on that bar, I'm not thinking about anything. I've told myself shins and thighs. Get the bar, execute the lift. Okay? By anyone should be filming their movements. So then I will go back to my camera, have a look at the movement. Was that bar painting my shins and thighs? Okay? What you'll probably find is that it did somewhere and it didn't necessarily somewhere else. Okay? 9 times out of 10, it's against the shies. It's against the shies. It's against the shins. It comes away from the thighs. In my next set, thighs. What do I need to do to get that bar against my thighs? So I'm sat down, visualizing how I want it to feel against my thighs. I might even practice with a dowel or even like just me pretending to hold that bar. What do I need to do to get that bar against my thighs? I need to push my knees forward. I need to squeeze my shoulder blades and try and push that bar against my body. As I go to the lift, shins and thighs, paint the shins and thighs, shins and thighs, shins and thighs. I'm literally chanting that main cue. As soon as I hook it on and I'm holding onto that bar, blank canvas, action lift. That is literally what I would do. Okay? You do not want to overcomplicate the lift before you go for it. Next question. I keep changing my focus every session and nothing sticks. How do I build consistency in my approach? Now, if you want my honest opinion, not many people do, what I would look at doing is literally changing your thought process. Do the opposite of what you're doing. So currently, I've printed these questions out and I wish I didn't. I keep changing my focus every session. So do the opposite. Don't change your focus every session. As I said in that previous question, your training cycle, whether that is a meso cycle within your main cycle, has a certain focus point. That focus point is going to stay the same for throughout, whether that's 6 weeks, for example. And I won't change that focus point. I might find that there's other things happening, but are they happening because the focus point isn't getting actioned? That's literally what I would look at. And sometimes it is hard to not go, well, this is fallen to shit now and I need to fix that, but then this isn't right and I need to fix this. No. No. Have the same focus. Do a really good job on that. Trust the process, as again, domino effect. Fix this one issue, and by you trying to fix it, you're overthinking it. That's what 9 times out of 10, that's what's then going to cause other things to then break down. Do a really good job of this. Trust the process. Over time, you'll start to see that then progresses and bleeds into everything else and starts to iron out. But because you have a focus doesn't necessarily mean that everything else is going to stay there. Fixing that one thing highlights the other areas. Fixing that one thing means that more energy is being focused on into that one thing, breaks down elsewhere in that lift. So it's about trusting the process, really. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there because you can go forever and a day into that question, and we just don't want to overcomplicate it, basically. Right, question number 6. I train well in the gym, but fall apart the moment a weight feels heavy. How do I fix that mentally? I love that question. And it's actually something that I've posted about today in my own training. And the brain literally plays these games with you. The one thing that I literally try and tell myself and tell all my athletes, and it's the thing that I'm still telling myself, doesn't matter how long I've been doing this sport, I'm constantly telling myself this, is that weight is never going to feel light. That's not the sport. The sport is to lift maximal weight in the snatch and the clean and jerk. So to do so, we've got to assume that these weights are going to feel heavy. So rather than going, shit, this weight feels heavy, we need to use that as energy, motivation to go to it. So for me, I'm like, yes, that's heavy. I've done all the work in my training to smash this out. Last week, the weight just before this felt really, really good. Everything's moving well. I know what I need to do. Visualize how I want it to be to go. And I'm almost exciting myself and like hyping myself up before that lift. I've got someone else who's like, yeah, let's fucking go and do it. You know, you've got it. Like, just grab the bull by the horns. You've got to find out what works for you, what you need to tell yourself to actually hype yourself up, give the motivation or get the motivation to absolutely smash that heavier weight. Because by telling yourself, oh no, it's lightweight, baby. You're only kidding yourself, because as soon as it comes off the floor, you go, that's heavy, and all of a sudden the lift is over and you failed it. Hype yourself up, tell yourself it's going to be heavy, use that as energy. Next question. How do I structure a training week if I can only commit to 3 days? There's various ways to do so. How I'm doing it at the moment, because time is short. I want to get home. I want to spend time with my daughter and my family. I'm literally doing session 1 snatches, session 2 jerks, session 3 cleans, and then my accessory movements. Back squat session 1. It's clean grip deadlift session 2. Front squat session 3. And then I've got a bunch of two accessory based movements thereafter, working on hypertrophy. My sessions are short. I'm focusing on snatches, cleans, and jerks, and doing a really good job of that. Okay, my weight then carries on progressing. You could look at you've got to look at what your weakness is and what your lifestyle allows. So my lifestyle, I'm busy, I've got places to be, I can't train for more than 75 minutes. That process worked well for me. I've got others where it's like, right, your jerk is the limiting factor. So we are going to snatch every session, jerk only on session 1, session 2 and session 3 we're going to be working on clean and jerks with a higher focus on jerks in session 2, and then in session 3 it's clean and jerks, putting it all together, seeing if we can action it. Session 1 focuses on what we're trying to fix. Session 2 actions it with a clean or some sort of variant of that movement. Session 3, put it to the test with slightly heavier weights. Snatching 3, throughout that week as well, same sort of principle. And yeah, that's how I would sort of look at it. Whether it's I'm short on time, I need to break everything down to actually get my lifts in, or the way you focus on it is having a look at what your biggest weaknesses are, what the areas that you need to work on, having a higher priority so you can do that a little bit more throughout the week, and you're going to reduce down your strengths. So cleans being your strength, reduce that down to once or twice a week, allowing you having more availability and capacity to actually focus on that weakness. That's how I would look at it. Don't overcomplicate your program. There's no such thing as a perfect program if the program doesn't fit your lifestyle. That's the first thing. And the perfect program then once you've found the perfect program that fits your lifestyle, then the perfect program needs to focus on your individual weaknesses and the areas that you need to push to actually move your Olympic lifts forwards. Yeah, and then you start to put the plan together, focused around your weaknesses. I think I've waffled there, but it made sense. Next question. How do I know if I need more technique work or more strength work to break through my plateau? If you're asking this question, you need to firstly download the weightlifting checklist and find out where your technique breaks down throughout the lift. If it doesn't and your lifts are perfect, you've got a strength issue. I can almost guarantee that your technique will break down somewhere, because no one is a perfect weightlifter. You're going to focus on that technical issue, and you can then start to build strength in the areas that you may be lacking strength. Things to look out for. If you are struggling to stand up your cleans, or your front squat is very close to your 1 rep max clean, you know that you need to start to develop leg strength. If your push jerk is well below or less than 80% of your jerk, you probably need to work on overhead strength. There's 2. I could carry on this lift. If your deadlift is very, very close, or your snatch grip deadlift and clean grip deadlift are very close to your snatch and your clean, you need to work on pulling strength. But you can still work on technique and strength together. One's going to have a higher focus, but these both sort of still go hand in hand. Technique, building strength within positions is probably one of the main things that we will look to do, and we do that by supplementing these accessory lifts. Yeah, so they both come hand in hand. You don't necessarily need to work on just one of those areas. At what point should I compete for the first time? And how do I know I'm ready? Now, there's no such thing as ready. There's just not. The thing that I would look at is, are you able to perform a snatch and a clean and jerk? I've not said anything about at a decent weight. There's no such thing as a decent weight. You are in competition with yourself. You don't need to go to a competition to compete with others. You are going, in my opinion, a competition is there to test your ability on a stage, under pressure, when you've only got 3 attempts. That is the best way to highlight the areas that you need to work on in your training. From there then, you use that information to create your next program, to work on the areas that you've highlighted, before then you go into your next competition. And then you look to assess what progressed, what necessarily didn't progress, what's the next areas to sort of work on. And that's what I would look at, is that, can you snatch and clean and jerk? Yes, go and compete. There is literally nothing else to it. There's no such thing as I need to lift X amount before I compete, and I need to do this, and I need to drop to this body weight to be competitive. Forget all of that shit. If you can perform a snatch and a clean and jerk, go and compete. If that is something that's like, yeah, I'd like to compete, just go and do it. Because I firmly believe there is no way that tests your ability in the Olympic lifts like a competition. You've got 3 judges that are going to tell you whether it's a successful lift or an unsuccessful lift. You're doing it to the standards of a competition. That then gives you feedback all in all. You take that and you then can start to manipulate your program and then move your training forwards. Like it's the best platform. Now that is something that I'm looking to add in to the weightlifting. No, I was going to say the weightlifting toolbox, but that is already in there. So the Optilift Performance Lab is a free school community. I've got loads of different resources in there. So I've got the weightlifting toolbox resource. That is literally the weighlifters A to Z on how to snatch, clean and split jerk, common faults and how to overcome them, and everything that you need to know about those Olympic lifts. Now this next resource that is going to get released within the next 2 weeks, hopefully, is all about competitions. How a competition works, weight classes, what to do at a competition, how to read the scoreboard, because now Optilift is British Weightlifting affiliated. I know I've got a bunch of people that want to compete. They are finally seeing that competition is about competing with themselves and not somebody else. I want to give them all this information, so when you go to the competition for the first time, it's not like, fuck, what do I do? They've got all the information. They then can just action and enjoy the day itself. That is a resource that I'm putting together. So if you are sitting there going, yeah, I would actually like to compete, and I've been that person that said, oh, I need to get to a certain weight, and you know how to snatch and clean and jerk, just download the school app, join the Optilift Performance Lab, go through this, understand the competition, and just go and get yourself booked onto one. Honestly, I can imagine, I can almost guarantee that you're going to have a great time. Because I don't know anyone that has gone to a competition and gone, not for me, fucking hated that. If you enjoy snatches and clean jerks, you'll enjoy competition. It's just how it is. Because it's the biggest test of all. You've done a 1 rep max in the gym. It's basically doing it the same, but with 3 judges that are going to say yes or no. And 9 times out of 10, if you have been practicing with good technique, they're going to say yes, and you're going to get a buzz off that. Go and bloody compete. So that is the end of episode 29. So as I said, in the caption below, you've got the link to the Optilift Performance Lab, the resources such as the weightlifting toolbox, the weightlifters A to Z of the sport, and the competition basics. Don't know what the name is going to be yet, but everything that you need to know pre-competition and during the competition, and what you need to do and how they actually run, if that is something that you are interested in doing. And if, as I've sort of said throughout this podcast, if you are struggling knowing where to fix your Olympic lifting movements, you don't know what is necessarily holding you back, download the weightlifting checklist. The link is below. It's totally free. If you open this up and you're like, what the fuck, where do I even start? What I'm going to do for anyone that has listened to this and got this far, just drop me a message that says episode 29 Snatch Chat podcast, and I will jump on a call with you for free and literally complete it for you, giving you the exact areas that I would work on if I was you and what to do, and then you can go away and action the plan. And if you want to, I can put the plan together, we know what we need to do, and we can work together doing that. And there's different avenues. Obviously, I'm not a pushy seller. I just want to just help as many people as possible. I put on as much free things as possible so you get the value out of it. Yeah, that is the end of episode 29. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've taken things away and that you can action within your training and life. I will see you next week for episode 30.